Hello, welcome to a non-book review video. I'm going to be doing the end of the year book tag. This was created by Ariel Bissett. She is a booktuber, has a wonderful podcast called Books Unbound with Raydan that I really love listening to when I drive into work in the mornings. Let's get started. The first question on the list is, are there any books you started this year but you still need to finish? The answer to that question is yes, like so many books. In terms of the ones which are the most realistic for me to finish in like the next 2 weeks, I think Percy and the Chalice of the Gods is a book I really want to read, and I'm going to try and read before the TV show comes out on December 20th, but I am super excited for. It's amazing that we're finally getting a faithful adaptation, and I'm really hoping the show does well. I'm really hoping we get greenlit for a second season and somehow we make it all 5 seasons. That'd be absolutely amazing, but also I don't trust things to work out that well. Another book I started reading this year is The Problem of Pain by C.S. Lewis. I am maybe a quarter into that book, maybe just over a quarter. C.S. Lewis's books, which are non-fiction, are very good to sort of pick up and read a little bit of at a time. That's how I read Me Christianity earlier this year, so I'm hoping to pick up that book a couple more times before the end of the year and hopefully finish it. Through my library at the moment, I'm reading The School for Good Mothers. That book I picked up on a whim after seeing it on social media. I heard about it a couple years ago. So far, I think I'm like 40% into the book, and it is reading super well. It's super engaging. The chapters are quite long, so I'm kind of breaking them up. It does have natural breakpoints throughout, so that's okay. I would describe it kind of as like a social horror, if social horror is a genre. The book has reminded me a lot of The Other Black Girl, which I read, I think, last year, and the parts of that book, like particularly the ending, like if you've read that book, you know what I'm talking about. The book kind of takes a turn and all the things are revealed, and it really becomes horrifying in this way I haven't read in other books. I've seen it described as social horror, and I think that term can apply for The School for Good Mothers as well, because you just read these paragraphs and you just end up horrified at the end of them. But it's a really good read, and I think it's going to be really insightful, and I think it's going to be a 5-star read. For Percy and the Chalice of the Gods, I am hoping that's going to be a 5-star read. I must say I was a little bit apprehensive when it was announced there was going to be a new Percy Jackson book. You know, it is obviously kind of a cash grab, but we're kind of all okay with that because Riodan was okay with that. I'm hoping to have a really good time reading that. Also, I'm so glad that Australia got the UK covers. Like, nothing against the US covers really, but yeah, I prefer the UK one. The second question is, do you have an autumnal... Man, I struggle with this word. Do you have an autumn book to transition into the end of the year? So it's summer in Australia, and honestly I'm not entirely sure when this tag is meant to be done, seeing as autumn I assume is also done in the Northern Hemisphere generally for the countries that have a distinct autumn period. So I'm going to rename this to, do you have a summer book to transition into the end of the year? I kind of struggled with this question. I don't think I have a really great answer to it, but I do have Fahrenheit 451 on hold with the library, although I'm not sure when that hold is going to come through, and that might get pushed back to next year. But I thought the title was fitting. Otherwise, I've got She Down There, which is on my shelves. That one's about the ocean and marine conservation, and I think it might be a little bit of a thriller. It's a book I picked up in South Africa. I believe it is set in Mozambique. From what I read of the first chapter, it looks very interesting, so I'm excited to get to that. I just don't know if it's really going to happen before the end of the year. If anyone wants some book recommendations for this sort of summery period, and particularly Australian, I would suggest Where You Left Us by Riodan. It's a gothic summer Australian, technically Christmas time read. Riodan writes friendships really well, like particularly in this book. Like from the first time you see characters interacting and she tells you they're best friends, she doesn't actually have to tell you. Honestly, I want to study it someday. My other suggestion is Social Cue by Keiko. That is just one of my all-time favorite reads. It's kind of more New Year themed, as the main character Zoe is going into the new university semester and starting a new internship, and Zoe thinks that nobody has ever liked her. She writes an article about it, it gets published, it goes viral. Turns out, no, there's like actually a couple of people who tell her she had a crush on them, so she sets out to interview them, and it being a romance goes from there. I haven't read the book of To All the Boys I Loved before, but I have loved the movie. I know, boo, movie before the book. But that book reminds me a lot of that movie, and I also think the cover is just adorable, so highly recommend. Also, finally, as a little bit of an odd suggestion for a summary book, Every Version of You by Grace Jan came to mind because the first chapter, or the first 2 chapters, has the main character walking around in climate-destroyed Melbourne, Australia, where everything is just hot and the sun is out to kill you, more so than us Australians say at the best of times. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that book a little bit later. Third question is there a new release you're still waiting for? The answer to that is no, so I'm going to rephrase it in the way that I saw Janine of This Story Ain't Over word it, which is there a new release from this year you still need to get to? For me, that is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. I absolutely loved the Darker Shade of Magic series, which you can see my special collector's edition there. I absolutely love the original trilogy. I read them all back to back in the space of like a week and a half to 2 weeks as library loans on my e-reader. When I got to the final book, I was just rapidly reading through that. I think I read the last book, A Conjuring of Light, in one day, which if you've seen the size of that book is crazy. But it was to the point where I was like sitting on a couch with headphones on, playing like fantasy pirate music with noise cancelling headphones and just wanting nothing to disturb me because I wanted to be fully immersed in the story. Next question. What are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? First of all, bold of you to assume I'm going to finish 3 books. But if I had to choose 3, I would say If We Were Villains, because that is a book I've seen so hyped online and so many people love. And the first page looks super engaging. So I'm hoping that I will just race through that book in the week between Christmas and New Year when I don't have any work to do. I have very high hopes for that book. We shall see if they live up to them. The other book is Fragile Threads of Power. Again, knowing how much I love the original series, I imagine I can get through that quite fast. And then for a third book, either The Problem of Pain by C.S. Lewis, as I was saying before, or Good Girl, Bad Blood, second book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, which I currently have on hold at the library because I finished the first one and I'm filming a little reading vlog where I try and solve the mysteries in those books as I read them. But I think there's like 2 people ahead of me in the hold, so I am really resisting the urge to just go to Big W and buy it. So if that library loan comes in, that will probably get read. Let's take a sip of water. Stay hydrated, folks. Next question is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favourite book of the year? I have really high hopes for If We Were Villains, as I was saying before. Everyone I see says it's an instant 5-star read, so you'll better not be lying to me. So I'm really hoping I enjoy that book. Currently that spot is held by Every Version of You, and that is going to be really hard to beat. Every Version of You is about this consumerist dystopia, utopia, Australia, an entire world where people submit themselves to this virtual reality world because the outside world has been ravaged by climate change. The book then starts asking questions like, well, if people are living in this all the time and we now have the technology to upload people's minds to it, would you do away with the physical world and with your physical body and join the digital one? And then how does factors like disability and family members who remain behind impact your decision? I'm probably not explaining that as well as I want to. Just basically, please go read that book. Not sponsored, I promise. Okay, for the final question. Have you already started making reading plans for next year? Yes. I've started making probably like way too many reading plans. So I've got a number of new releases I'm super excited to read, but I'll talk about that in another video soon where I talk about the books I want to read during the summer. Some of them I don't think many people would have heard of, or you'd have to be in very particular circles to hear of. Some of them have already been published in the US and Canada and the UK, but Australia's only getting it now, which is like a publishing pet peeve of mine. But first up in January, I want to try and find a secondhand copy of Boy Swallows Universe because the Netflix series is being released around the middle of January. So that's a piece of Australian fiction that honestly I probably should have read by now, but oh well. I'm also thinking about trying to read a bunch of like classic dystopian books back to back, like some of the ones I didn't get to read in high school, like 1984, The Handmaid's Tale, Brave New World, those kind of books. And then I also really want to read Prophet Song, which was the winner of the Booker Prize this year. Usually I don't keep up with those awards, but I just happened to watch it this year. And that book sounds really intriguing. It's about like a dystopian island. There are themes about like suddenly becoming a refugee and like how that impacts your life, and I think it's a very 2023 novel. That's the way I've been seeing people describe it, and I think it definitely sounds like that. Will say that apparently it doesn't use quotation marks, and from what I've read of the sample through my library app, that seems to be true. So I am considering listening to it on the audiobook. Otherwise, I've got a bunch of South African books on my shelf I want to get through since I've had them a year already and I haven't finished any of them. Some of them I put down because they were just really dark and depressing. Like you see the controversial stuff in the US and the Australian and the UK like literary scene, you pick up a South African book and you go, oh yeah, no, nothing compares to what is allowed and commonplace in these stories, because that's what life is like there, and literature reflects life. Oh, and finally, as I mentioned a little bit before, I am reading the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. I finished the first book, I've got the second book on hold at the library, and I'm hoping to read the third one and I'm filming my process of reading them and then stopping and trying to give my theories about what is happening, who the murderer is, what the chain of events is, who's guilty, who's not guilty. Basically, I'm trying to solve A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And having just finished the first book, I will give you a little hint that I did pretty well with my predictions. I'm quite happy with how I did. So yeah, subscribe. Those videos will be coming out next year and I will post them all like 1 week apart so you don't have to wait a long time. So yeah, that concludes the end of year book tag. The sun is literally disappearing as we speak. I'm pretty sure it is already below the horizon, so I'm going to do some wild things to make this video look nice. But please bear with me as I work on my video and audio quality, and I will see you next time.